everybody, this is the Wikstrand. So, Tsui Hark had big plans. He was not just going to do 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, but 7 movies based upon the books that this movie is based on, you know, the 7 Swords chronology or whatever it is. And this was, you know, made on the back of the massive successes that was the 3, you know, big ones when it comes to the waifu movies. The waifu are these you know, very unrealistic but very poetic and spectacular martial arts movies. Hero, The House of Flying Dagger, and of course Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. So this was going to be a great jump off point for Tsui Hark, he assumed. But despite getting some pretty good reviews in Asia, the movie never really, you know, left any big marks or anything like that, and was forgotten soon after it had been released, and any sequels that was planned did not, you know, end up happening. So I was kind of curious about this thing, and I watched it and I didn't really like it that much. And after not having seen it for almost 20 years, I decided I'm gonna have to rewatch this thing in order to be more fair when I'll do my assessment. Maybe, you know, I was a bit too harsh on it the last time I saw it, but I rewatched it and realized it's actually even less good than what I remembered it to be. It's not a bad movie per se. It's not you know, terrible or anything like that, but there is so much that is missing from this thing. Let's find out if you think that you're going to like it or not. This is 7 Swords. So the Emperor of China has decided that martial arts is bad and dangerous, and therefore anybody who practices it shall be killed. So he has hired these warlords, these face-painted, weirdly weaponized guys who more feels like they have escaped from Mad Max or Conan the Barbarian or something like that. I kind of think that they're really cool, but we'll get to them in a second. And they are just, you know, wandering around and killing people at will. Not just those who practice martial arts, but also, you know, women and children and the elderly, and they sell them for some reason. So they're basically a bunch of just murdering assholes led by this general. And they just made another raid on a village. But the thing is that there was this guy who was sort of kind of protesting against them and, you know, giving them a bit of a hard time. And they're chasing him, and he ends up wounded in the next village that is on the chopping block in their pass. So there's a big debate on whether or not, you know, they should, you know, leave him to the murderers or if they should, you know, protect him. And some of them ends up, you know, siding with him. So as a gratitude for, you know, saving his life, he brings them up to this huge ass mountain where he bestow upon them the 7 mythological swords. And with the help of these swords, they, you know, become something else. They become legendary warriors who are able to, you know, fight back against these evildoers. And, you know, they hurt the general a bit and, you know, kill some of his men. But this just angers the general, and now it is personal. So they have to evacuate the entire village, and now they are on the run, hunted by the general, who will stop at nothing to, you know, kill every single one of these people. This is essentially our story. It seems like a pretty good idea at first. We have a good setup with a good, you know, bunch of characters we could potentially be interested in, and we have bad guys, colorful henchmen, and we have a big budget. So what's the problem here? Well, for starters, 2.5 hours is way too long for this movie. It's not like, you know, Tsui Hark is a bad director. He has done a lot of really good movies, and he has done a couple of martial arts movies that are fantastic. He has done one of the best martial arts movies of all time, Iron Monkey. But this this feels like it wanted to sort of kind of be like the big three when it comes to waifu without being it, because this is not technically a waifu movie, I think, because, you know, it doesn't have the people flying around or, you know, defying gravity and all that stuff. We'll get to the action sequences in a bit, but first we have this problem to take care of. We have very, very underwhelming characters. When the swords seems to have more character than the people wielding the swords, then you know that your movie is in trouble. It doesn't help that I always get confused who is who, and the fact is that aside from Donnie Yen, there isn't really any, you know, recognizable stars in this movie. This is not a who's who of Asian cinema, it's who's that. And that is a problem that potentially could have been fixed if they would have had, you know, fantastic action sequences, but they really don't have that. They don't have these spectacular, character-driven action sequences that they had in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. They didn't have the poetic, ultra-stylized, spectacular things that they were going on in Hero. And they don't have the more story-based things that they had in House of the Flying Daggers. It ended up just sort of kind of being there, and they were not very well edited, and they didn't look that spectacular. They could have combated that thing, on the other hand, with having, you know, lots of gruesome violence and spectacular gore, but despite having hacked off limbs and quite gruesome stuff sort of kind of happening, it feels hollow and bloodless and pointless. The biggest problem, I think, with Seven Swords is the fact that it is too long and the movie drags along severely. We don't even have that much spectacular cinematography. We just have, you know, these stark deserts that aren't very interesting, or we have these caves, especially towards the third and kind of confusing act of the movie, where, you know, lots of these more melodramatic soap opera things are happening. But it's just, the fact is, I don't really care about these characters, therefore I don't really care about the situations they're in, and the story could have potentially really worked, but the fact of the matter is that it's just, I just don't care. You could have combated that thing if you could have had really memorable villains in this thing, and potentially we could have had that. These face-painted, ridiculous henchmen with their even more ridiculous names that has weapons who seems to be designed by 9-year-olds. I want him to have a shield with, you know, spinning spikes and things, and I want one of them to have a very unpractical weapon that looks like a gigantic backhoe that he can, you know, kill people with. It will be great. Now, if they could have, you know, had those take a more prominent role in this movie, then it would have worked. But since these people keeps getting killed, and, you know, the number of memorable henchmen that he had under his command just got thinner and thinner, they kind of, you know, slunk into the back row of this thing. And the general himself isn't very interesting as a character, it's just some dude. And the whole thing ended with a underwhelming and quite unspectacular finale that did have some, you know, high stakes in it, and it had the setup for being a fantastic finale, but it ended up really not working. And then they had the audacity, after all of that, to grace us with sequel bait for a movie that absolutely will not happen. It's just the worst case of blue balling, especially when it comes to a movie that wasn't that spectacular or that interesting from the start. Hey, you want to have some more of this? Just you wait what we're gonna bring you. And the answer to that is none. So, Seven Swords is a movie that is on the precipice of working, but they could not quite get this thing off the ground. The movie just moved so slow, and the things that happened wasn't that interesting. And despite when you read, the synopsis on paper, it looks dramatic and it looks interesting. The whole thing with, that they have a traitor within the ranks, and who are they and who can they trust, and all of that thing just got in the way of what else could have been a quite spectacular type of an almost, Seven Samurais or 13 Assassins or, the Magnificent Seven type of a movie. But instead we just got this kind of bland, uninteresting, overlong movie that relied too heavily upon not very good action sequences and drama that really didn't grip you in any way. So I don't recommend this movie. I do recommend Iron Monkey. And if you want to take a look at a really, really good Asian costume drama with, backstabbings and war and, colorful characters and who can you trust and betrays and stuff like that, things that this movie sort of kind of wanted to do but failed, I would recommend The Curse of the Golden Flower. One of the greatest costume dramas I've ever seen. It's a masterpiece. It's fantastic. This thing is not. It's just an underwhelming, overlong movie that is uncertain of what it actually wants to be, because it keeps, switching from these strange, over-the-top mythological tales that almost feels like a fable to, the more gritty costume drama kind of a thing that it couldn't decide on which leg it would stand, and it ended up standing on neither of those legs. It ended up standing on their knees. The acting is fine, and some of the characters do have characters that could potentially have worked if the situations and the direction would have been better, I guess. Seven Swords is an underwhelming, uninteresting movie with a great concept and a fantastic synopsis that unfortunately does not work. I gave this movie 36 points. The setup is so great, and there are ideas here who is really, really awesome. But it ended up not working for a variety of reasons. Do I think that this movie sucks? No, I do not. I just think it is an underwhelming, uninteresting movie that tried way too hard to not exactly understand what it was or why it was. Tsui Hark has made lots of great movies. This is not one of his best. Maybe in the hands of an Ang Lee or somebody like that, they could have made potentially a fantastic movie. Now it is a barely okay movie, and, despite the fantastic concept, it, simply didn't work. So have you seen Seven Swords? What do you think about it? Which is your favorite martial arts movie? Comment below, and I'll see you next time for so-and-so reviewing, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.